hard to believe that people will nod along with that. Oh, I have to protect you. I have to take care of you. Because that's the natural human impulse. That's where this comes from, by the way. This idea that greed, lust, envy, what's that? Pride. That all of these things are evil. By the way, maybe they are evil. Maybe they are. Maybe they're good. I don't know. But that's my point, that we don't know either until we really consider it. But what we do is we take for granted that there's this thing that decides what's good and evil for us. God. And even people who are not religious will say, I don't believe in God, but you know what? Greed is bad. Lust is bad. Envy is bad. Pride is bad. And they'll still list the same 7 sins, supposed deadly sins. But then they'll say, but I don't need a God to tell me what's right and wrong. That's exactly where it comes from, though. And then that's why we have that presumption. We assume it because we live in a culture where we've been taught that these things are good and evil, but we really don't know what good and evil are. It's more of a cultural expression. I'm a reflection of my culture. I believe that these things are good and bad. That's why we use things, we use these phrases like, gotta, and they have to be, and there must be. We speak in these imperatives because we're not necessarily relying on our own authority. Even if we say, I believe this, what we're relying on is the authority of something much bigger than us. In the case of these things, maybe we're referring back to God. Or in the case of the person who comes along and says, we have to stop people from sharing different points of view on Twitter because we might convince people. And people, that expresses an attitude that people are generally stupid and then are easily led. And again, that was a prevailing attitude in Germany in the 30s, in Italy, in China today. This idea that they don't necessarily believe in God, but what do they replace God with? They just replace God with the state. And they say, well, the state will take care of us. The state will do these things. And by the way, the state, which provides our culture, tells us that these things are evil. All the while, by the way, the state is being run by the most greedy, lecherous, envious, prideful people. We elect them. We put them in office. And then we express values that are completely contrary to a person. I mean, think about what it takes for a personality type to come along, look at the country and go, 330 million people, an economic system that's so incredibly complex that no one person can possibly understand at all. I can fix it. I don't know that, do you think that politicians come along and say, I'm going to fix things? Or do you think people come along and say, I want to get in on that? And nothing is everything. Of course there are politicians. I'm thinking of one person specifically who I knew quite a while ago. He's a family friend, actually. And he was a local politician when I was growing up in Los Angeles. And he's actually good friends with my mom. When I was in a band, he used to come to my shows. And he would send representatives from his office to come down. And then he became a congressperson. I remember sitting there one time thinking, we have congressional support for our gig tonight. This is a federally recognized concert tonight. And then I look at who this person is today, and he's still a prominent politician. I just think, my God, this is not the person I knew all that time ago. This person has changed. Dramatically. To the point where that person before, we would sit around and talk. I wouldn't have dinner with this person today. Well, I would, but I wouldn't eat if they made the food. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so that person is all of these things, in spades. And so I wonder if there's something there where it takes a person who is these things to pursue power. In other words, to believe, I can fix everything. I've got the answers. That's a lot of pride, man. That's a lot of, and it's not even just self-confidence, because even to have self-confidence, you have to believe that you have answers that nobody else has. So you have to elevate yourself. It's part and parcel of running for a leadership position. Or it's just a desire to have power. I don't know anything more than anybody else, but you know what? I really want to get in on some of this power stuff. I really want to be in charge. And so it's, the harder a person runs, the more we vote for them. It almost seems like we should do the opposite. We should go onto the street and just find some dude walking down the street carrying a backpack and just be like, hey, what's your name, dude? I don't know. Jesse. Jesse, you want to be president? No, man, I'm running late for my shift. Perfect. Let's go. And we have to kidnap this guy and grab him and throw him in the Oval Office and lock the doors. He's running around looking for a way out. I want to sit there and go, that's the guy we want in charge. The guy doesn't want to be in charge. Maybe. My point is just that I want to get that across, that we say that these are evils, and then if you're a religious person, you say they're evil because God says they're evil. If you're not a religious person, you probably say these things are evil, and if you really get down to it, because I've been encultured by the state to say that these things are evil. So therefore I do. And again, maybe at the end of your reasoning, you'll go through a process and you'll say, let me consider why these things are evil or not, and develop my moral system. And then at the end, you might still come to that same conclusion. Greed is evil, lust is evil, envy is evil, pride is evil. And then you may settle on that, which is totally fine. It's totally fine. But then at least it's your own system. And I don't mean your own system in that, therefore it's great because you're great and wonderful. I'm just saying now you can believe in something. You know, if you believe that, I don't know, if you genuinely in your soul come to this conclusion that greed is evil, then you will not be a greedy person, probably. Probably. If you just say it and you don't really believe it, and all of a sudden someone drops $10 million on you, and all those things you said you would do if you were rich now go out the window because you didn't really believe it. You know? But if you actually come to that conclusion and you go, wow, greed is evil, and all of a sudden you win the lottery or whatever, and you're like $10 million, you have any idea how much good I can do with this? And then you give away all your money. I have a friend, a guy I know, who made a bunch of money in his mid and late teens. He made a couple of $1 million. And guess what mid-late 20s. Guess what he did with it? He gave it all away. Yeah. He invented he had a friend who wanted to go to college, and the guy didn't have very much money, but lost both his parents. So he invented a scholarship fund and encouraged his friend to apply to the scholarship fund, and then paid for him to go to university. A bunch of money to a private university. Now, and that guy, guess what he does now? The guy who got the scholarship. He's a junior high school teacher. Guy got a couple $100,000, living expenses, the whole thing. Only person to ever win this scholarship. And then my friend, the guy I know, he just gave it all away. And I asked him, like, do you ever regret it? And once in a while, he sits there and he laughs, and he's just like, he'll see like an expensive car, and he'll tell me, I used to be able to buy like 10 or 20 of those. Not so much anymore. He doesn't really regret giving the money away. He just regrets being poor today, which are two completely different things. And he's not like destitute. He's not like on the streets or anything like that. But the point is that when he was in his late teens, early 20s, he came to the conclusion that he could do good with money if he had it. And that was an easy thing for him to say when he didn't have any. And then he had some, and he just kind of followed through with it. Same with lust, envy, pride, and any of these things. If you really genuinely in your soul come to the conclusion that these things are evil, then you're not going to act out on them because you have that constant reference point of yourself. If instead you're just relying on the state or God, oh God, I'm sorry for what I'm about to do, and you go and do something. Or if it's the state, all right, the state's not looking, I'm going to go do this thing. But you're always looking. And you're far less forgiving of yourself than God would ever be. So you know what I mean by that. I'm sure some of you suffer from that right now. So if there is a God, where does so much evil come from? We talked about that last week, I think. The idea of theodicy, if God's all-loving, all-powerful, all-knowing. Why do kittens get hit by cars? Why do moms die from cancer?
Because it's their time to go.
What's that?
It's their time to go.
But understand what we mean when we say something like that. Well, it's just their time. Who's holding the watch?
God.
Yeah. When you say something like that, that just implies that there is someone holding the watch. It's just like when you say like, good times evil must be repaid. When we believe that, like karma's going to get that person. First off, you're relieving yourself of the responsibility of dealing with that evil person. And you're saying, you know what? Let karma do it. Then you have to believe that someone's controlling karma. You have to believe there's some force out there that's more powerful than you or I or all of us together in the universe that's directing human events to make sure that this person pays for it. You're making a theological statement when you say something like this, even if you don't realize it. And again, that just goes back to probably being encultured. Whether you think that that's going to come from the state or whether you think it's going to come from God. And then this last thing here, I'm going to talk about because it'll take us past the time I wanted to spend on this. This is really interesting. This idea that good times must be earned. You know, why do we want? I'm gonna weave that into a quote, another one, because I really like this. This is an interesting idea that if something good comes to us, we don't really appreciate it unless we feel like we earned it in some way. And this is borne out, by the way. People who earn a bunch of money feel very differently about themselves than people who inherit a lot of money. And I mean, we've studied this to death in the psychological literature. People who inherit money do not feel the same way about themselves as people who earn the money. And by the way, you can see this now. You see like a lot of very wealthy children and grandchildren of prominent figures who come out and complain about. Like I was just thinking of one right now. Who is she? God, she's the daughter of who is it? Multi-billionaire family, and she's come out on social media talking about how she's a communist. She believes in the principles of communism. I was thinking of it. It's not Elon Musk's daughter. I know what she has done recently. One of his daughters. She's got 14 kids, I think. But I'm trying to think of who she is. But I'll think of it. But she came out recently and was just all over social media talking about how she's a communist. It's like, you've got billions, so give it all away. Give away every single penny of it. Well, I'm not that much of a communist. But so why does she claim to be that? Because she hates herself. Because she feels guilty for having a bunch of stuff that she did not earn. It's like if you guys came to me and if you worked hard for an A, and you would feel one way about it. If you came to me and you had like an F, and I was like, all right, whatever, here's an A. You'd be happy about it, of course, but you feel very differently about it if you did yours. And that's just one grade in one class that you took over how many, from these years here, which won't matter within a couple of years. Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of why we like underdog stories so much, because you really see someone grow and really earn that success instead of just someone who just is naturally gifted, because at that point it just becomes expected.
Yeah. And you can see this in our superheroes.
Yeah.
This is why we look at like Captain America, and we say like, well, he's the product of a genetic experiment. Yeah, but who he was before he became Captain America. You took that personality and gave him those powers, and then you see his struggle. And then you look at some of our more recent ones, like you guys saw the live-action Mulan.
No.
Compare the original Mulan to the live-action Mulan. The live-action Mulan that came out recently, the thing that she's struggling with is that she's just too badass. That's her problem, and she just didn't really. She has to contain how awesome she is. There's no struggle. There's nothing to overcome, and she didn't earn it. She was just born with these supernatural powers. You look at the original Mulan. She's using the skill set that she does have to overcome, and it's quite impressive. I mean, she doesn't go out there and just wipe out an entire army. She uses her brain to figure out how to cause an avalanche that wipes out an army, and that's something we can relate to. Because there's something that's earned. So if there is no God, where does so much evil come from? And if there's no God, where does any good come from? That last part, another time. We're already running deep. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Not a bad Thursday. Happy Thursday.
It's a great Thursday.
Something positive.
Yeah.
Windy. It's
Something happy.
cold. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, something happy. Except for Boethius, who was executed.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, already that guy, but you know what?
He died for a sin.
I feel like someone did say that you have to have good if there's evil, right? You have to have evil if there's good.